Gonzalo Munoz, who's the Chilean high-level champion, and I have been particularly pleased to work with We Mean Business and Exponential Roadmap and the International Chamber of Commerce to launch an international SME climate hub. And I'm thrilled working with Andrew Griffiths, who's the Prime Minister's champion for UK business ambition, that we've now seen the launch of the UK SME hub to provide the toolkit for SMEs who don't have all the resources, who don't have a whole sustainability department, to provide a toolkit of all the tools that smaller companies need. I mean, I spent the first half of my career working in industry in what the Germans would call Mittelstand companies, not small companies, but I mean smaller companies. But I was just checking the stats today that 99% of UK companies are SMEs. It's incredible, really, when we think about how disproportionately large companies get, and 60% of employees and just over half of revenue. The real message I want to share is that I often hear that it's not fair or not reasonable to expect SMEs to move as fast on the race to zero as larger companies who have more resources. And if I can get across one message is that, one, this is not a choice. This is an inevitable transition. So it's rarely a good idea to resist the inevitable. The second of all, this is a huge opportunity for smaller companies because you're more nimble. I remember when I first started doing some work with Walmart about 14 years ago on how they could engage with their suppliers. We, on the issue of climate change, we worked with a group of 36 suppliers from the full range of size, from the massive global multinationals to really small niche, medium-sized suppliers. And one of the surprises was that it was the smaller companies who were able to respond more constructively and more quickly, because if they chose to, they could react more nimbly. So let me just emphasize why I say this is an inevitable transformation and one that you don't have a choice about whether you make this transition. If you spend even a very short time, like an hour, reading a summary of the science is so strong that this is a very big problem. And I always couch the science in terms that business leaders might understand of audit and risk committees. An audit and risk committee looks at a given risk and says, how likely is it that something that risk will happen, and how bad would the consequences be? If you think of 1.5 degrees of average global temperature rise as a risk event, every time the scientists review the science, they tell us that the likelihood of that event is going up. Now, that's not such a big surprise because we know we haven't done enough yet. And so for as long as we're not doing enough, the likelihood of that event of 1.5 degrees of temperature rise will keep going up. But what people often don't notice if they're not paying attention to this series of scientific reports that come out every few years, the next of which will start coming out in a couple of months, is that every time the scientists look at the impact of 1.5 degrees of temperature rise, they assess it as worse than the last time they checked, because our understanding of the flow through of temperature rise to extreme weather events and economic and human damage keeps improving. So in terms of risk management, this is a complete failure. It's getting more likely and it will hit us harder. And that means that the incentives to change are also going up. I mean, any of you who've got young kids who are learning about science and climate change at school will probably have had the awkward question about mummy, daddy, what are you doing about climate change? But now technology is really starting to change. I mean, the costs coming down precipitously on solar, on wind, on batteries. EVs will be much cheaper to buy, let alone run, in just a matter of 2 or 3 years. And so the transition away from combustion engine is accelerating. But now the really big guns are arriving as policymakers and investors. Last week, at the on the eve of President Biden's climate summit, Mark Carney and I and the UK presidency launched the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. 160 asset owners, so pension funds, asset managers and banks with $70 trillion of assets between them committing to get to net zero. 43 banks. Probably most of you are banking with one of those banks. So those banks will be looking for opportunities to fund businesses that are contributing to this transition. And that will be across the full range of their lending portfolio, from major multinationals to small and medium-sized enterprises. So this is an inevitable transition. Policymakers are driving it. bankers are driving it, and it's disruptive, which means it's an amazing opportunity for nimble companies to snatch market share from their more cumbersome, larger competitors. So it's a great time to be an SME in the UK and in the Netherlands, embracing this policy and investor-driven change, reacting to the science as a disruption, which provides an opportunity for nimble companies to join the race to zero, which I urge you all to do if you haven't done already. We're seeing the numbers of SMEs going up really fast now. We have the SME hubs, and take advantage of this disruption to strengthen your business by building the solutions which society is demanding for a zero economy future. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you very much, Nigel. We have some questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one is from Marco. How can we transform this engine room from running on fossil fuels to running on sustainable fuels?
I mean, one is accelerating the transition to clean power. So that's power that's generated with wind and solar, and we're making huge progress there. I mean, the UK in particular has made amazing progress. And the Dutch being as a fellow North Sea country, you know, North Sea is a huge powerhouse for global wind. And then it's to electrify the hell out of everything. So everything, you know, so that make the electricity zero carbon, but then make everything else that burns stuff as you know to electrify. So cars is the first one, right? You know, we know the I think both the Netherlands and the UK are real leaders in phasing out combustion engines, and we expect that, you know, we've seen some big announcements from car companies. You know, first it was Mercedes 2039, and then General Motors 2035, and then Volvo 2030, and Ford in Europe 2030. So no one will buy a combustion engine car in Europe after the early 30s. I mean, that's really clear. The direction of travel with technology, policy, and costs is clear. So electrifying transport is a huge one, sometimes directly through batteries. It may be indirectly through green hydrogen. I saw just yesterday Uniper announcing that they're not going to build an LNG terminal because LNG is not going to be a bridging fuel for shipping. It's going to be green ammonia. So they're now investing in green ammonia terminal because the world's shipping fleet are very quickly realizing they're going to have to use that as their zero carbon fuel. So it's about greening electricity and then electrifying everything else.
Thank you so much. We have another question for you. We're all very happy to have you here, so we don't waste it. What role can MNCs and financial institutions play in supporting SMEs in their transition?
Well, I mean, MNCs can, and you know, you see a lot of this. A lot of MNCs have joined they have a supply chain collaboration and working with CDP or working with the ICC's Climate Hub. You know, like whether I think HPE, Walmart, Unilever, I mean, many others are helping their suppliers with toolkits and with training to understand their own climate journey. They're also helping by blazing the way in terms of markets for renewable energy, which makes it easier for everybody to buy renewable energy. I think that financial institutions different. I mean, I think that and here banks is really the key. I mean, you know, the big asset managers mainly dealing with big privately held publicly held companies, so probably not such a role for the BlackRocks of this world, but definitely for all of the main banks who are working with SMEs. And I think that you will see banks looking for opportunities to invest in companies who are innovating to support this transition. And those 43 banks that were announced last week, I think will soon become 60 or 70 globally. And so if you're an SME who is particularly focused on that transition, you might look at your bank to see if your bank has woken up yet, or is still or is a laggard bank. Because if you're a leading SME, you want your bank to also be. So if they are leading, then start talking to them about how they're going to help you. If not, you might point to the fact that there's a club forming that they're not in and that they might need to join.
Thank you. Then one last question for you. From Alex, very good points raised. SMEs can only do so much before to public do so much before to public infrastructure limitations block them. How do we get local and regional authority leadership to tackle this? Rugby pun not intended.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question, Alex. And I think I think that, I mean, I think that the levers there are your role in value chain. So if your supply, I mean, I think when I was running a small business in the northeast of England, and for example, we had some multinational suppliers, as everybody does, and some very small, important local engineering suppliers. So I think working with your bigger customers who locally, but also your trade bodies, whether it's the whether it's the Global Compact or the or a Chamber of Commerce. I mean, whichever bodies you're a member of, which is a way of aggregating, because of course that's the challenge with an SME. You don't have a loud voice on your own. So, but I think those would be the two routes. Your value chain, particularly if you're in a value chain of a company, major multinational that is being very vociferous around this transformation, because then you'll have some resonance there. That would be my initial thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I'm sure I wish you all the luck of the world in the preparations to the COP26, and we hope to meet you again in person before November. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I will now move on to our next speaker, the Dutch ambassador to the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, Karel van Ostrom. In 2015, the ambassador was present during the conclusion of the historic agreement on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, known for the SDGs. Today, the ambassador will speak to you about the importance of collaboration in order to achieve the SDGs in his speech, Together Doing the Right Thing. Ambassador, over to you.
Thanks so much, Lynn, and I'll improvise a little bit because I was very much inspired by the words of Nigel about the responsibility we have towards our children. But first, thanks so much for NBCC, PwC and Global Compact Network Netherlands to organize a seminar. And I see some friends from my time in New York here as well. And I always salute the work of these magnificent organizations in this very important topic. Allow me 2 short sentences to update you where we are on COVID and on Brexit. On COVID, do not travel. Mid-May, we expect both in the UK and the Netherlands a review of travel policy. Meanwhile, don't travel across the North Sea. Secondly, on Brexit, the challenges are huge. We're working with many of these companies who are present today, others as well. Trade numbers are down, and at the same time, the Dutch embassy, our network, including the NBCC, is there to help and assist. So if you have specific problems, contact us. Now, coming back to when you introduced me, Lina, you mentioned the time I was in New York working both on the climate agenda and the development agenda. And I think one of the important things in the past 15 years that we connected the two. Until that moment, climate was separate from development. And in 2015, by negotiating the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we tried to create a policy framework which would both contribute to fighting climate change and to promote sustainable development, which has a huge role in it for the private sector. And that's why we always work so closely together, certainly with UN Global Compact. But when Nigel mentioned our children, I had to think of my son who graduated 3 or 4 years ago on his thesis when he was investigating both the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. And he was looking into the Ruggie principles and the way the role of the private sector in this whole context has changed and should change. And some companies still have to change. And like 10, 15 years ago, in the Ruggie principles and corporate social responsibility, a lot of the time they said, if companies do not do any harm, then it's fine. My son's thesis had a title, From Doing No Harm to Doing the Right Thing. And investigating 7 or 8 of the major Dutch companies, including a few smaller ones, he concluded that aligning your business model with the Sustainable Development Goals made on the one hand moral sense, it's the right thing to do, but it's also in an economic sense the right thing to do because it's profitable. The investments which are taking place along all 17 Sustainable Development Goals are so huge that if you're out of sync, you miss a lot of opportunities on the one hand, and you're not doing the right thing. Also, the Dutch government, the current demissionary government, has made that step. When you look at our own contribution to Agenda 2030, that's enormous. Secondly, by having the enhanced climate change targets we agreed in the European Union last week, we'll translate them as well to the national level. The reductions in CO2 emissions we want to achieve are of enormous scale, and more important even, there's now also an agreed political target by 2050 to have our whole economy circular. We hosted 2 weeks ago in the Netherlands the World Circular Economy Forum plus Climate, again making that connection with the climate agenda. End of January, we had the Climate Adaptation Summit in the Netherlands. If you look behind me, you see a Dutch painting with people on it, and it has its title, The Dike. Rising sea levels for any Dutch person are an existential threat, even, because we're basically not safe when it gets to, the water gets much higher. So that's why we welcome the role of the private sector. We really hope that this seminar will be about sharing knowledge and sharing best practices. And let's together make a difference. Let's together do the right thing. Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We have one question, and I will read it to you. Do you expect that countries' NDCs to be submitted before COP26 will be ambitious enough? What can SMEs do to advocate towards their governments to take more action on climate mitigation and adaptation?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. The first part is, I don't think it's the right question. So are countries' NDCs ambitious enough? It's all about plans, it's about delivery, and it's about money. When I worked in New York, and I'm not in New York anymore, but I take the liberty of talking a little bit instead of Joke Brandt, who is my successor there. When I talk to Joke, he says there's still a problem of financing. If you look at the financial commitments taken upon themselves by the richer countries in the world and the amount of money which is needed for the least and less developed countries in the world, the gap is simply too big. So plans on paper are probably ambitious enough, more or less. The key thing is delivery, and that's the second element. So it's both money and making it happen in practice. What small and medium enterprise can do to advocate towards the governments, I would make, my answer would be twofold. One, show that also small and medium enterprises can make a difference. We all have a responsibility as citizens in small companies, big countries, knowledge institutions, governments. We should all chip in together. And the second point is, of course, political. With, for instance, Lynn, I presume you have talked or will talk about the plan of the NBCC to bring a joint statement towards COP26 on sustainability and countering climate change. That kind of organized political pressure always helps. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your energy and your inspiration. I fully agree. Let's take action together and together do the right thing. And to build on your suggestion, indeed, today is about sharing best practices and knowledge. So I would like to invite the next speakers to step forward. Tije Veen, Managing Director of Sky Energy, Henk-Jan Beltman, Chief Chocolate Officer at Tony Chocoloni, and Zubair Andar Bawani, Founder and CEO of Atalos. Tije, first to you. Can you explain a bit more on what your company is doing and its mission, Sky Energy?
Yes, Lina, thank you very much for inviting me. And I wanted to go back to the first question that was mentioned by Marco Swan. How can we transform this engine from running on fossil fuels to running on the sustainable fuels? That was the question that popped up more than a decade ago when we were working with KLM. And they saw that 99% of their emissions were based on the fossil fuels that they fueled their airplanes with, and So they saw the issue popping up already then, and Sky Energy was set up basically to build and to market sustainable aviation fuels from that moment. And so we started in 2010 with small volumes of sustainable aviation fuels made out of used cooking oil, and just showing the world that it was possible to fly in a more sustainable way. So that was sort of the start of the company, and at that moment it was still sort of, was it technical feasible, was it could it be done in an economical way? And what you see in the last the last 10 years, it's been more and more a topic of how to cope with travel and in a sustainable way. And electrifying businesses is a good thing for a lot of industries. For aviation, it's still far away. So sustainable aviation fuels for the next decades is the solution that we've seen. And so we supplied all over the world, small batches to airlines, but also involving airports, governments. And in the last 8 years, we've been involving companies as well, as they are one of the big users of airplanes by their business travel. And so we've seen that businesses can play a role there as well. And of course, we started working with the big companies to make them aware of what was possible and how they could help enable the energy transition in aviation. And so we set up a program that's called Board Now, where these companies commit for the longer term to fly on real sustainable fuels. And well, the good thing is that our first member of this program was Wieneke Haagsma from PwC. So good to see you here. That was a long time ago, and so and we've progressed, and we're seeing that it's really important that you don't have only the airline, but also corporations stating out loud, yes, we want to fly on these sustainable fuels, and it might be a little bit more expensive, but we want them because that's the only way. And if you then talk about banks, these banks are sort of committed to finance these big capacity projects, because a refinery is a big investment, and they think they want to invest in green projects, but there has to be a business case, and a business case you can build on the airline, but also on the companies that want to be involved and that want to commit for the longer term to be part of that. So this is a program that we started for the bigger companies, but it's also open for SMEs. We're working towards COP26, piloting all the recognition of the scope 3 and how to calculate and how to make sure it's all arranged in an administrative way that it makes sense. We're doing that also together with PwC, and that's something that we see for the next 6 months to come, that a lot of companies will show their interest and want to fly in a more sustainable way when we start flying again.
Thank you very much, Tije. For now, I'll get back to you later, but this was already, of course, very inspiring. I will now go to Henk-Jan. I think that everybody knows Henk-Jan probably. In the UK, they have launched, I believe, in 2017 or so. They are already growing very rapidly, also conquering the UK. But nevertheless, Henk-Jan, can you explain a bit on your company and especially its mission?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, and thank you, Lina, and thanks for showing the picture of the NBCC Sustainability Award. Looking forward to actually meet each other in person again instead of doing everything over Teams. That would give me a better opportunity to hand over some chocolate bars from me to you. That is virtually impossible. We're not a chocolate company. We are an impact company, and an impact company is a company that strives to make impact. And that's the only reason why we exist. If you realize that today over 1.3 million children are doing illegal work in Western Africa in the value chain of cocoa, that doesn't give me any reason to consume a chocolate bar or enjoy a chocolate bar. So if we would like to enjoy a chocolate bar, then we have a responsibility to take care of the whole value chain and make sure that the beginning of the value chain gets at least a living income. So we source the cocoa from our 5 sourcing principles, and through the whole value chain, keep them separated until they end up in our bar. So our bar actually contains a chocolate that is produced by the farmers that we know and that we pay the living income. The reason that we call ourselves an impact company and not a chocolate company is that I want to smile when I'm old and gray and toothless in the rocking chair. I want to look back whether we have made the right choices and whether we have actually invested in the right things. And if you ask me, what are the right things? What are the things that make you proud? Then it's the team Tony's that we have, and the impact that we make. And impact to me is twofold. It is environmentally and socially. And if you realize that you lend this beautiful planet from future generations, then you have to give it back in a better shape than you got it. And I think that's where the SDGs come in. That's exactly what we realize today. And it is not up to governments or NGOs to make the world a nicer place. It's up to us as companies. And I think if you work at a company that is really trying its utmost best to fulfill a purpose instead of filling pockets, then I have the feeling that you're more committed. So it's easier to make headway in a commercial company that is striving towards a purpose and making the world a nicer place than to create shareholders' value just by itself. So I fundamentally believe that businesses can be an enabler for a better future. And for us, the better future and the problem that we have pulled towards ourselves is we are striving toward a 100% slave-free chocolate chain. Not just our chocolate, but all chocolate worldwide produced. That means that there is a roadmap with 3 steps. The first step is we have to create awareness of the problem. Second step is we have to be successful in solving the issue in our value chain in a scalable manner so that we can inspire other companies to act themselves as well. And if you realize that we have a really easy task because we are founded as an impact company, not as a chocolate company, and we would like to change other companies who are already in the same kind of business chocolate as we are for over a decade or over a century even, then it's more difficult to change. So we have to inspire them instead of telling them what they do wrong. We would like to invite them to do good themselves, so that the 1.3 million children doing illegal work will be eradicated from the value chain of cocoa. The other companies have really nice people working there as well. So it's not us against them, it's us together for a better future. And if you look at the environmental side of producing chocolate, then 5.5 kilograms of CO2 emission takes place for 1 kilo of chocolate. And 42% of that is milk powder. A lot of consumers enjoy milk chocolate, and we have to find alternatives to make sure that the CO2 emission comes down when it gets to milk chocolate. What I believe is that the competition that we're in is a fight for equality, financial equality first, to make social impact. We reduce the impact that we have on the planet, and we offset the piece that we cannot reduce yet. We are carbon positive company at the moment, and we still offset far too much. So I rather reduce than offset the emissions that we make. True Price is doing the calculations on equality, and on the social side, Just Dig It and Good Shipping are two examples that offset the impact on the business or on the planet that we still have. More information is in our annual report, and we call it our FAIR report, not to be said in Dutch, Tony's jaarverslag in plaats van jaarverslag. So this is a report where we're completely open on all the mistakes and all the successes that we have celebrated last year. And lastly, we're a proud member of the B Corp community, the first European B Corp to be completely accurate on that topic. And for anybody who doesn't know the chocolate, please raise your hand, send me your address, and I will email you, no, not email, I will mail you a couple of bars. Taya, they're coming your way. Line, your nose is growing.
Okay, now then I will switch to a difficult question for you, Henk-Jan. Indeed, the ambassador was speaking about the importance of collaboration. He said, let's take action together. I remember that when I was working at Unilever, I introduced small and mighty packages, and we did category promotions together with Henkel and Procter & Gamble to really drive change and to drive change in the minds of the consumers. Everybody at that time said, you're crazy. Why do you do joint promotions with competitors? But we said, well, we can't change the world alone. We need to do it together. How is that for you? Do you have examples that you are really driving change together with competition? I can imagine in the UK, it's a very mature and crowded market. You were the last to enter, also in the Netherlands, of course. How is that for you? Do you have examples that you worked together with competition to achieve your goal?
Well, I fundamentally believe that working together is the only solution to getting to making impact and change in the world. So we have Tony's Open Chain, and Tony's Open Chain is a sourcing platform where other companies can join and can actually source in like-minded way as we do. Delicata is the private label of Albert Heijn, is completely Tony's Open Chain. Yocolade is a German chocolate brand, is completely open chain. Holland Foods is open chain. Aldi is having some recipes open chain. So actually, we don't keep our secrets to ourselves. We actually open up, and like open source, we help other companies to a more sustainable sourcing of cocoa beans.
And in the beginning, we spoke about that contribution to SDGs is very nice, but actually it can also create a competitive advantage. Do you think that your proposition has also helped you conquer the UK market, doing something good, making a difference towards the other chocolate brands?
I think if you know exactly what you want to be and what your aim is, so the more pinpointed you are, the better your competitive edge is. For us, it's making the world nicer and making impact and eradicating illegal slavery, we call it, from the value chain of cocoa. That is definitely something that sets us apart from competition. The only thing is, only 10% of the people buy for the fact that we're slave-free, and 90% of the people buy for the fact that it's tasty chocolate, new recipes, funky feel. So there's a little bit more than just doing good.
Thank you very much. We'll get to you later, but now we move on to Zubair Anwar Bawani. He's the Director, UN Relationship and NGO Partnerships at Atalos. And Zubair, can you explain a bit more on your company and your mission?
Yes, thank you, Lynn and Linda, and welcome to everyone who's listening in. wonderful stories being exchanged. And Hank, I'm already inspired by your story, and I'll definitely be sending you our address for the chocolate. Well, we're a tech for good company, and we've kind of reevaluated, reflected, and evolved where we are. So we've actually become, Hank was talking about how he's a company driven by impact. So we're purpose driven as well. And we've become a movement of people doing good, supporting others doing good, and aim to be catalysts for shaping what happens in the next decade. Obviously, our core business is technology, but we found ourselves reflecting on the impact of what we were doing within our kind of communities and our customer base. And we felt that we weren't doing enough. And the usual kind of dipping your hand in your pocket for supporting philanthropy and good causes is still prevalent in the way we work. But it was very much about having this sense of kind of responsibility that maybe we should be doing more, but we never quite understood what more we could do. And then we found ourselves asking so many questions and talking to people, and we found through collaboration that we actually educated ourselves, and we're still on that journey very much, about what more we could do. So when we talk about things like climate, it was always for us about, well, recycling and reusing just doesn't feel like it's enough. We need to clearly be doing more. And I think for us, when we talked about what more we could do, or how we could be different, or how we could be making more of an impact, we found ourselves circling in the same kind of areas and arenas of coming back to recycling and reusing. Then came along the SDGs, and our life kind of changed, and we were like, wow, this is this awesome, lovely, universal language that everybody speaks from. It's a wonderful framework that will help us take the steps that we need to take to get where we think we could do more, but also help us navigate what that space looks like as well. And we've made some great friends along the way with the team in Global Compact in Netherlands and in New York, and other partners as well. And I think fundamentally for us, we've felt that we can use our network and our platform to mobilize other people to do good as well. And in doing that, we're also learning ourselves as well what more we could be doing. So we feel that we've become the champions of the SDGs, custodians, if you like, of finding those further champions in business, goalkeepers, if you like, who can advocate better. And fundamentally, our business is about connecting people. It's about creating access, being inclusive, and creating inclusivity through telecommunications. We felt it was the right thing to do. So we've developed a number of services and products around that remit of being purpose-driven and having impact. So we have a global donation service that provides support for NGOs and startups in fundraising, reaching out to donors. We have a whole host of other tools. We launched our Global Ambassador Program last year at the UN General Assembly, and we've got great people doing great work now as we navigate that space as well. And then just to bring it home back to climate, we realized that just recycling and reusing wasn't going to do it. We needed to do more. So we aligned ourselves with those experts that clearly knew what they were doing. We recently signed up to the Climate Hub. We're looking forward to COP26. We're here today. I think our message really is that we don't have to know everything about everything, but we need to take some strong and bold steps in sort of looking at impact and looking at where we'd like to be and where our responsibility should extend to. We've had a great deal of learning in this whole kind of journey. We hold our hands up to say that we may not get everything right, but we're willing to try. We know that we're going to need collaborations and partnerships very much along the way. And we also are mindful of the fact that we're evolving as a business. And if we can understand frameworks and understand the SDGs a little bit better, then we can be smarter at delivering on the SDGs, because we're a great company that innovates. We're a great company that connects with people. We're a great company that builds relationships and partnerships. So if we've got the SDGs kind of understood and under our belt, then we've got a great space to do really meaningful and purpose-driven things for not just for ourselves, but also for our communities and our stakeholders. And I think what we've learned along the way is that, you know, seeking third-party assistance is absolutely essential. So collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Develop timelines of delivery, not just targets. And that also we should look at balancing our ambition, not wanting to achieve everything in the world, but looking at what can we do right now and what can we scale up to do later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hubert. And it is very inspiring to hear from you and to hear about your journey. I quickly would like to ask, because I see that today is all about you and about our companies and what they can learn. I see that we also have in the audience Maxime Gelman from Strudels. Maxime, can you very briefly, as a chief Strudel, tell us something about your company and what other SMEs can learn from you?
So yes, basically, as
can you speak a bit louder?
Oh yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes,
even more loud.
Yeah, okay. I'll do my best. All right, yeah, thank you. So as Lynn said, my name is Maxim, and I'm better known as Mr. Strudel, or the chief strudler of Strudel's the pasta store. So basically, we founded, or we have created like a drinking store from pasta and other eco tableware, like edible plates, edible spoons, and edible cups. And basically, but again, we are not trying to create a product, we're trying to create a movement. And we're basically there to inspire and show people how easy and fun sustainability can be. Because like some of the other speakers also said, like there is, at the moment, how it looks to the public, there's a lot of things are created like this doom and gloom scenario. So there's a lot of things happening in the media. Everyone recognizes the plastic problem, but then at the end of the day, many people are left actionless. And basically, we are strong believers, and the message that I kind of want to carry out is that like we need like millions of people to do sustainability imperfectly rather than thousands doing it perfectly. Hence, there's obviously like a mass market that we need to get to. So obviously, with our products, they're fun to use. Basically, they don't compromise lifestyles. And basically, what we saw by if you look at our Instagram, it's like turtles biting someone's hand for using plastic and things like that. But basically, with very fun messaging, a very fun products and actionable products that don't compromise people's lifestyles. That's how we can get through to people. And basically, at the end of the day, just getting a lot of people to do small things. And then subconsciously, it will be step by step. Now they're starting with seeing a pasta store in their drink. It starts making clicks. They're going to ask questions. They're going to start thinking. And so over and over, we're basically planting the seeds for bigger change. But yeah, I mean, there is the radical change, but then it's millions and millions of people that need to do smaller things. And so, yeah, so basically, yeah, and I'll stop there. So, yes, yeah, so just basically the message I want to take away is just like about empowering people with actionable things and basically breaking with all the stereotypes around sustainability and how difficult it is, and just basically delivering it in a fun and happy way rather than in like it's burdensome, it's difficult, I need to change my life. And that's definitely key, because that got us viral press, like and lots of people supporting and joining in. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maxime. And I think that we should share your products also with the companies, because just like the Tony Chocolonely, also your products are really great. The eatable pasta straws, the eatable tableware. But I will share that with the participants afterwards. Then I have a question for Tije from Alex Durand, who also works in the aviation sector. He is saying sustainable aviation fuel is central to aviation emission reductions, but few airports stock this. How can we increase its availability in the UK at Netherlands airports? Tije.
Thank you. It's a good question, and I think we're still at a situation that there's only a couple of companies that produce these fuels, and that's been the biggest hurdle to get these fuels at all different airports around the world. I mean, last year or 2019, I should say, 0.1% of all aviation fuels was a sustainable fuel. And if the supply chains are not in place yet, it's really hard to stock fuels at the different airports around the world. So basically what's happening right now is that we work with a book and claim system where if you as a company or as an airline want to fly on sustainable fuels, you buy them, and we find the most efficient way to get those fuels into the aviation system. Of course, as soon as we're developing a facility in the Netherlands, we will be supplying to Schiphol Airport, but also in the UK, there's developments going on to start producing sustainable aviation fuels. And then still, you won't see them at all the airports because it's really expensive to have segregated systems in place. But it's coming, and I mean we've been waiting for it for 10 years, and there's a real acceleration happening right now. So there is possibility, but not the physical molecules yet at all these airports. But the book and claim system is something that's really it works well, and it's most efficient to work with at this moment.
Thank you very much, Tije. And now I have, I think there's another question from the audience. I have a question for Tije, for Zubair, for Henk-Jan, but also for all the participants to see if everybody is still sharp and awake before we move on to the interview with Marcel Beukeboom, who is the climate envoy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and Wieneke Haagsma. And my question to you is, and you can put the answer in the chat, companies can reduce their carbon footprint through the process that is called offsetting, which contributes to reducing global emissions, enhancing livelihoods, and protecting the planet. And my question to you all is, are you familiar with carbon offsetting? The first answer A is no, not yet, but I would like to examine the added value of reducing my company's carbon footprint through offsetting. B, no, because I think there are better ways to reduce your carbon footprint. C, I already use carbon offsets to reduce my company's carbon footprint. And D, yes, however, I have not offset emissions as of yet. And I'm very curious to hear all of your answers, Tije, Zubair, Henk-Jan, but also all the participants. So I see everything coming in. I see A, B, C, D. D again. I still think there is some work to be done. Thank you all very much. Please continue sending in your answers. Then we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. So I would like to give the floor to Wieneke Haagsma, Director Corporate Sustainability at PwC, who will moderate the interview with Marcel Beukeboom, Climate Envoy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Wieneke, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lina. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. Do you hear me well? Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. And Marcel, it's great to see you here. Although it's a shame we're not in person, but at least it's a great opportunity to see so many people at the same time. And we would like to know a lot from you in the light of COP26 and SMEs and our government. But before I go into the content, and I would like to make it personal always first to get to know you also a little bit. So what in this light of these topics like COP26 and SMEs and our government keeps you awake at night? Hopefully nothing during this time, but the question is, of course, what really worries you at this moment?
Yeah, thank you for this first question. I think you could say that we have been pretty successful so far in getting to international agreements to do something about the climate crisis and other major global threats. The Earth Charter, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, they've all been mentioned and I think are great examples of what diplomacy and international cooperation can achieve. But that's not your question. You asked me what keeps me awake at night. And what worries me is that the first of these landmark agreements dates back to 1992 already. And it was based on knowledge that was already widely available in the early 70s. And here we are, 2021, and we're still debating what to do. And the paper of these agreements is patient, but our climate is not.
So following up on that, because I couldn't agree more, right? Lots of action is really urgent at this point. But what about your role? When would you say your role is successful, or actually what is your personal dream to achieve in this matter?
You know, thematic envoys are generally appointed to underscore the importance of a political issue. And the fact that we have had a climate envoy for over 10 years now means that climate change has always been high on the political agenda, at least for the past 10 years. And the fact that more and more governments are appointing climate envoys illustrates that the issue is also rising on the international political agenda. At the same time, that's worrisome. If we would have been successful in addressing the problem, we wouldn't need special envoys. So my real dream is to become redundant.
That's a great ambition. I very often also say that, like, I wish that we don't need a sustainability team, right? But that it's integrated across all the others. So let's now, Marcel, go into the role of the government. I'm very curious to hear from you around latest developments first. Can you give us some insights on what the national government's ambition is for the Dutch economy, but also your expectations on the impact from the latest elections?
This, of course,
without raising any.
Yeah, this is highly speculative. As you know, we have a caretaker government after the recent elections, and actually, as we speak, there is a very important debate going on in our parliament. So let me answer this question by referring to some policies of the previous government, and also by interpreting some of these circumstantial signals that we could see. In the coalition agreements of the government that took office in 2017, already the preamble stated that we will confront the challenge of climate change and the Netherlands will become sustainable. And also, we go for the most ambitious goal of the Paris Agreement. More concretely, in the paragraphs on climate, the bar was raised to 49% emission reduction in 2030. There was the ambition to come to a national climate agreement to achieve this, negotiated with all relevant stakeholders. The intention was to lobby for even more ambition in Europe, and there should be a national climate act with a long-term goal of climate neutrality. And to top this off, and this was a response to a demand from the private sector, a dedicated Minister for Economic Affairs and Climate Policy had to make sure this would all materialize. And it did. So that is, I think, the good news of the past couple of years. And now for the nearby future, what I call the circumstantial evidence. We know that most political parties had climate paragraphs in their program for the elections. And of the parties that are most likely to form a coalition agreement, all want to continue in that direction that was chosen and that I just spoke about. And several actually want to do significantly more. Further, our successful lobby for 55% in the EU has created a whole new reality. The EU Green Deal sets the parameters and a higher sense of urgency. And this higher bar in the EU also leads to, I think, a level playing field which is also more beneficial for businesses. This new context has already led to a report written by a commission that studied this new reality, and they came up with a whole set of possible extra measures on top of the National Climate Agreement. And I think that these could serve as an inspiration for the parties negotiating a new coalition agreement. Also, and that is perhaps a different angle, opinions and sentiments in the Dutch population are polled every now and then. And those pollsters do see a raised awareness of the urgency of the problem, translating into higher expectations of a government taking care of it. And maybe finally on this circumstantial evidence, legal space is becoming tighter as well. So the well-known agenda case, I think all viewers know this, will keep any government on its toes. So not doing enough will undoubtedly lead to new court cases. And then really finally, maybe on this question, that market realities are also changing rapidly. And I think we could say that sustainable business is becoming the new normal. More and more companies are feeling a broader responsibility than just shareholder satisfaction, spurred by customer demand for products and services with a smaller ecological footprint. And besides that, many businessmen and women prove to be human as well.
Luckily, yeah, these days. Yeah, and I recognize the rapid change also in businesses who find this luckily more and more important and incorporated in the core strategy. So Marcel, also considering the audience today, let's deep dive a little bit further into specific SMEs, because large corporations can finance their green projects through green bonds. But often SMEs cannot finance their operations in that way. Will the Dutch government be supporting the financing of green initiatives specifically by SMEs in any way? Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah, maybe a small variation to one of my earlier answers is I think we should say that green should not be a project. Sustainability, in essence, is an economic term, and any healthy business is having a long-term success on its mind, I think. And this means that you do factor in changing circumstances and in resource availability, in customer preferences, in market conditions, and yes, also in the changing climate. And to illustrate that, when the World Economic Forum asked business leaders what they see as the biggest risks for their corporations, the majority ranked climate change and related issues at the top of their list. So the awareness is absolutely there. And where improvement is still possible, in the effects that businesses themselves have on the climate. It's a two-way street, you could say. This, of course, does not mean that the government is not helping SMEs to make the transition. And for example, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency is having an extensive menu of products, services, and subsidies to assist. And maybe also interestingly, commercial banks are also increasingly offering products to this effect, reflecting that simple reality that green is rapidly becoming the most profitable business model. So I would say there's quite a bit available, and perhaps also a little bit countering the observation that you had that it's only for the larger corporations, perhaps even the opposite.
Yeah, I also saw a big advertisement or not a big advertisement, but an advertisement of a big bank on the Dutch Financial Times last Saturday, specifically on the SMEs working on SDG 12. Yeah, so it's indeed, I see that also. But talking about new actions, and action is for sure required, right? And therefore it's also the theme or at least the aim for COP26, as we all know by now. Can you share some things, like which new actions is the Dutch government currently advocating for at COP26 for specifically SMEs?
I think that the short answer should just be none. And perhaps that's logical as well, that the Paris Agreement sets universal goals that apply to everyone, and through its rule book that will hopefully be finalized in Glasgow, an international, what I could call climate regime is set up. And this will allow states, but also non-state actors like businesses to work towards realization of these goals. And the Paris Agreement works in such a way that countries have the liberty to come up with their own climate plans to do their share. And with the realization, it's perhaps one of the reasons why this is organized in such a way that national circumstances differ, as do economic sectors and businesses. So any enterprise, small or big, will have to find out what kind of help they can get to contribute to the sustainable future that we want.
So then, do you have any specific recommendations for the SMEs then, or insights, or other? You were already referring to something just earlier, but are there any things on your mind which you would say is a recommendation or encouragement for specifically SMEs? Also leading, away to the COP26.
Yeah, maybe also inspired by these circumstances. I think here I could say that no SME is the same. We see examples of businesses thriving during the pandemic that we currently face, and we see businesses that are barely able to keep their heads above water. So I want to be careful also in using that cliche that you have heard in the beginning of the pandemic, that we should never waste a good crisis. I know that many entrepreneurs have used this past year to think about the future, about what new developments are relevant for them, looking at the different kind of companies. A travel agency will of course answer that question completely differently than a dairy farmer. But if I would generalize here, I would say that for both, the boundaries of our ecosystem are equally relevant. And if you want to stay in business for the longer term, you will have to anticipate, and this is perhaps a general recommendation, you will have to anticipate stricter environmental regulation. You will have to anticipate a higher price on carbon and a growing eco-awareness of your customers. And I do realize that that's easier said than done. Maybe you think back of the well-known example of Kodak. Kodak did almost everything right when they saw the changes happening around them. They worked hard to become the best in processing and printing photo rolls, and still digital photography wiped them out faster than anyone could have predicted. So this is very hard as well. So really make it general. My recommendation would be zoom out to see the bigger picture and create true value instead of shareholder value.
Yeah, and as a last question, Marcel, very grateful also for your time and your insights. We see a lot of action already happening, of course. SBTi targets, carbon pricing. I also think that Tony Chocolonely, Sky Energy and Atlas shared all beautiful examples this afternoon of very concrete actions on our sustainability journey. Which action do you expect every SME will take tomorrow on our collective way towards net zero?
Yeah, I think this is, you phrased the question spot on. Do it today or tomorrow, and not wait for COP26, for example. The COPs are what they are. The literal acronym stands for a Conference of the Parties. In essence, they are a meeting of of negotiators and diplomats. The real action is, and I'm very glad to see this afternoon that is what we are talking about, and perhaps that's a characteristic of entrepreneurs. You want to see direct impact. You want to know what the result is of your actions. And I would say that the international framework and perhaps also the international mindset is there to get into real action and to find that impact. And yeah, to reflect on your question is what I said earlier is look at what you can do yourself. There are definitely instruments and subsidies, etc., and regulations that can help you, and they're really changing into a direction that is greener, based on the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. But then I just quote a little report that we came up with in the Platform for Sustainable Finance in the Netherlands. The banking sector did a little research into the obstacles for greening their own businesses, because the perception was that they couldn't go faster because of the enabling environment and the lack of regulations and instruments for them to do that. And the surprising conclusion of that report was there are no formal obstacles. So the fact that they thought that they couldn't it was a mindset. It was a perception that they couldn't. So that recommendation or that conclusion, I think I could generalize to everybody. Don't think there are obstacles for you to become more sustainable or to be the change yourself. And I think in the last panel we saw several examples of people that embody that. And that is what we really should do. Not look for the excuses, but look for the possibilities.
I really like that positive and action-driven mindset, and I think it's highly necessary for a journey. And I wish you also a really nice journey towards COP26, and also a journey from today, right? That's so thank you so much for your time, and back to Line.
Thank you very much, Wieneke, and thank you very much, Marcel. Indeed, very good. I fully agree. Always look at the possibilities and take the action now. We hope to have inspired you. The clear experts today look like it's Wieneke, it's Tije, it's Henk-Jan, but we also have a lot of experts in the room today. And it's Annemarie, it's Kostas, it's Mandy, it's Meike, Jan, many people. So the question for me is, who is the real expert? And there's a lot at stake, because today with us, you can win your own 1 hectare of protected Amazon rainforest and the generated carbon credits for 1 year. Marcel, do you already have that? Your own hectare Amazon?
No, I don't have that.
No. And then the other prize that you can now win is the SDG game. And thirdly, also very nice, some extra gifts from Henk-Jan. So there's a lot at stake for all of you. So I encourage you to stay awake for a couple of more minutes. And then I would like to invite you all to go to kahoot.it, and you will see now on the screen the page. And the code that you have to go to is 5798520. So I repeat, 5798520. And then we will see who of all of you is the real expert. And Tije is putting in an upgrade to a fossil-free flight. So that's an extra prize, an extra motivation for all of us to put in the right answer. Now, let's see, what's the first question? If you all have your nicknames in, then the first question is, Marcel is in, I don't see Wieneke yet.
I will wait a little bit because I see that a lot of people are still joining the Kahoot. So I give another minute and then I'll open it.
Fantastic, Rowan, thank you so much. I don't see, oh yeah, Wieneke is in now, Marco, Julie, Alex is in. Now, I think, and Tije, is he in? Okay, I think we can start. I hope Tije is there. The first question that you can now vote on. And the question is it true or false? Sky Energy is developing the first factory for fossil-free fuel in the world. Is it true or is it false? Okay, I think we can move on to the, oh, Mandy is raising her hands. Mandy, would you like to say something? We go to question 2. Which sector is the biggest user of water worldwide? Is it industrial sector, transport, agricultural sector, or is it the financial sector? I see that Marcel is sitting on the front of his chair, Wieneke as well, Tije. So 15 have it good. Question 3. The bottom of the bars of Tony Chocolonely represent inequality in the chocolate industry. Which countries are in the unequally divided bar? Amber, very good. Very good. Now, the next question. The EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050, an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions. What is the 2030 goal? As of March 2021, how many countries have signed the Paris Agreement? Well, this is for Wieneke and Marcel, obviously a piece of cake. But how is Amber doing? That's the question. Oh, we have a podium. Amber. No, yeah, you have to take me out. You have to take me out. Who is the, so the number 1 is Go. The number 2 is Amber. And the number 3, Rowan, who was it? Julia, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's Julia.
Yeah, fully agree, Kostas, fully agree. I wanted to have my own hectare in the Amazon, but I agree. So number 1 is Go, number 2 is Amber, and number 3, I believe, is Julia. Oh, Go is Annemarie. Look, this is so she's the winner. So Annemarie is the winner, and then Amber is the number 2. So Annemarie, you will get your own hectare of protected rainforest. Amber, you will get the SDG game plus Tony Chocolonely. And the number 3 that gets the Tony Chocolonely, I believe it's Julia, but we will double check it. So with that surprising winners, I would like to hand over for the closing remarks to our chairman, Anton Valk. Anton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lene. Thank you for joining this webinar. Can you hear me? Am I normally in speech?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for this seminar, this webinar, which is hosted by the NBCC and Global Compact in the Netherlands and PwC in the Netherlands. I only could attend partially the seminar, unfortunately, because of another meeting, but I had the last part I was in, which I thought was very encouraging. I didn't participate as an expert, but you did all, so it was a nice game. I hope that with our initiative, we encourage ambitious outcomes at COP26 and that public-private partnership will be stimulated. That's the aim for what we are doing in this series of conferences. I would like to thank Karel van Ostrom, our Dutch ambassador to the United Kingdom, and patron of the NBCC for his excellent speech. It's good to know that sustainability is also a top priority of the Dutch government and of the ambassador. I also would like to thank Nigel Topping, High Climate Level Climate Action Champion for UN Climate Talks COP26, Marcel Beukeboom, Climate Envoy in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Wieneke, of course, Wieneke Haagsmo is always so much involved, Director Corporate Sustainability at PwC. We are very grateful you made the time available to speak today. Thank you for that. Also special thanks to our panelists of today, to Tije Veen, Managing Director of Sky Energy, Henk-Jan Beltman, CCO of Tony Chocoloni, and Subar Anwar Bawani, Director UN Relationships and NGO Partnerships, Atalos. We hope you have enjoyed this session, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much.